We'll have to set up standards to discuss this. Contrails are a difficult phenomenon. We saw that from the previous speaker as well. We don't really know that much about them, at least not in the open debate. So we know they depend on temperature, on local humidity, about the composition of the exhaust gases, aerosols, be it natural aerosols or the aerosols from the engine, wind conditions, etc., etc. So there's a lot of variables which make this scientifically a very difficult exercise. So temperature and relative humidity, and on average we say, well, contrails can become visible above 8 to 8,500 meters, and that is the same range in which the cirrus clouds are found. We have distrails, which means that when an aircraft flies through a cloud, it may alter as well the circumstances locally. And we have seen this also with the previous speakers, the vortex from the wingtip, which is, to my knowledge, not dependent on temperature. It's because of the very low pressure. And the low pressure makes condensation, facilitates condensation. And they just evaporize again after a few seconds or minutes. And you see this beautiful vortex when an aircraft, especially when it starts landing, which creates an enormous vortex at the wingtips that you can sometimes see these beautiful curly clouds. Supersonic flight as well, shock waves, also a pressure differential we see very abrupt, will create sometimes something which you could call a small and not persistent cloud. We also know that chemtrails exist because we do spraying. We do spraying for crops, for example, and we know that they have been spraying also for military purposes. So chemtrails is nothing new. We know about it. Also, we use them for fun. And I don't know if you've ever seen these guys. It's incredible what they do. And they increase the show by adding some smoke and colors. And probably this is done by a technology with powder, colored powder, whatever. So we know that it's possible. One of the nastiest chemtrail records, of course, is the Agent Orange. This report is called Case Orange as well. I think this refers to this quite dreadful event in Vietnam during the war, in which no less than 42 million liters has been sprayed out over at least 10% of Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia, killing a lot of plants, animals and damaging humans as well. We also know that chemtrails is being done throughout the world in some countries like China and Russia because they don't want bad weather during parades and Olympic Games, for example. We know that Moscow seed clouds to avoid too much snow in the winter in Moscow because they say, well, it costs too much to clean up the streets from snow, so let's try to keep the snow out of town. It doesn't always work. Everybody who keeps track of the news knows that sometimes it gets even worse, like in China when Beijing had the worst snow in ages because of this seeding procedure. Well, you can buy a sunny weather for $6,000 in Russia. Okay, then the odd event of weather reports stating that some of the radar images that they have on television are not created by natural phenomenon, but by cloud seeding by military aircraft. The one in Germany in 2005 is exemplary, which started over Holland. It's quite big, by the way. It's more than 200 to 300 kilometers. And the weather report in America over California, showing the green areas there, in which this weatherman even reports to the audience that it's chaff, and chaff is bits of aluminium. And he says as well, I know what it is because I've done it myself, something like that. So this is happening. It's not a hoax, it just happens. Chaff, by the way, is used in military aircraft to divide maybe some rockets launched towards you to distract them. Okay, effects of man-made contrails. Meteorologists usually deny the effects of these contrails, probably because they don't know much about it. So it makes it very difficult for them to give any comments about it. But investigations have been done as early as the 1950s, in the 1980s, and also nowadays, I presume. So we could say that the contrail knowledge is quite poor. Investigation, as I showed you earlier, is quite difficult. And the only opportunity in which you can do an experiment without any aircraft was just after the 9/11 attacks, in which there was a window of 3 days without any aircraft, and as well recently with the volcanic eruptions. Those data are being processed, so probably we'll hear from that quite soon. But from these 9/11 post experiments, Travis and other scientists say that it shows a significant influence. So, a contrail is basically a chemtrail, even if it's a contrail, because chemistry, everything you see is chemistry. So, but the usual combustion gas from an aircraft engine consists of CO2, water, all kinds of nitric oxides, a bit of sulfur, and the aerosols, which we refer to quite a lot when it comes to chemtrails, soot, and other kinds of unburned hydrocarbons. So that's nothing new there. I do know from my experience that aircraft engine over the years have become more and more efficient. And that also states the report that they say that, well, about nearly 100% of the fuel is combusted into all those natural combustion gases. So the soot part is really very limited. There shouldn't be much in there. But on idle conditions, so you have a very low force from the engine, you even have 1% of the fuel that is not combusted. So that gives a bit of more pollution. So the engines become more efficient, so more mileage to the gallon, better noise properties, so reduction of noise, and also, therefore, less pollution. That's what we know. So with respect to the aerosols, they should only be less compared to the time in which I grew up. Another thing goes for the military aircraft, because they use better fuels than the average jet fuels for civil aviation, because they have to perform all round in very dry conditions, in very cold or very hot conditions. So their fuels are added with all kinds of additives to make them better for all these circumstances. Those combustion gases should contain more pollutants, more aerosols of all kinds of substances which we don't know because they're patented. Another thing is about the military fleets. Most of these aircraft are quite old and they are using old engine technology, which means they are more pollutant than more modern civil aviation aircraft. That having said, we are looking at the effects of contrails on the climate. So we know about cirrus. Cirrus are ice crystals, usually above 8 kilometers. And it states that 30% of the sky can be clouded with cirrus on average. It's usually less, but it's possible that 30% is clouded. What do we know about cirrus? Well, we know that the Earth absorbs heat, but radiates heat out again. And intermediate modulator is the cloud coverage. So the cloud, being white, may radiate light from the sun out before it hits the surface of the Earth, but also the radiation that has hit the Earth may bounce back because of the clouds. So it works both ways. And the thing is that it is very difficult to say which of these two wins. So is cloud coverage helpful to reduce heating up, or is it not helpful but detrimental? And that debate is still going on. We simply are not sure about it. Not in all conditions. And because the contrails are such a big phenomenon, especially in certain parts of the world, we should make another sort of nomenclatura category in our World Meteorological Organization. So we should deal with it. We cannot just ignore it or say, well, it's not nice or it's nice to see. We have to take it as a serious phenomenon. Exhaust aerosols are nuclei, we saw that already, for water to form ice crystal, and they create the visibility of the trail. So that's the ice crystal that we see. And then we can have either persistent or short-lived contrails. We have seen this already. There are some investigations that are looking to cirrus formation compared to what is already there in the natural circumstances. And we can see that, especially over Europe and the United States, these man-made cirrus patterns are seriously contributing to the cirrus clouds. Well, several studies are discussed in the report, and usually the discussion goes towards that cirrus is quite negative for climate. These two guys, Whiteleg and Cambridge, of the Stockholm Environmental Institute, state that in general aviation poses a threat to several stakeholders. On a global scale,